Hi, welcome back. Fire up the printing presses, my friends. It's time to churn out a quick trillion worth of worthless paper so that we can cover up another theft run by corrupt governments and bankers. Today, European leaders agreed, yes, to a $1 trillion rescue plan. I call it the cover-up plan, on the heels of the $150 billion bailout for Greece last week. So you add $1 trillion to that. The EU and the International Monetary Fund agreeing to open up the coffers for any Eurozone countries in need of help, with the goal of avoiding a total collapse of the euro and a return to, yes, 15 currencies in that part of the world. You can think of this as a TARP bailout for Europe. That obviously turned out very well here in America, especially if you're a corrupt banker or politician looking to pick off a few $100 million or $1 billion for yourself at the expense of a nation state or maybe a few of them. And speaking of our generosity, guess who is helping to foot the bill for Europe's bailout? Thank you. We are opening our wallets to help the European allies, given that the U.S. currently supplies a fifth of all the funding at the IMF. It means that you're paying $8 billion to help Greece directly not deal with its $400 million debt problem that it was, of course, hidden away nicely by its banking friends until it emerged as a giant, scary beast that no one could pay for. Sound familiar? And then $57 billion of the rescue package approved today. You see, it's in the interest of the bankers and politicians to hide this and then give you things until they can't hide it anymore, and then they just print money, see? Add to that the Federal Reserve's promise of providing loans overseas, and Ben Bernanke's new decision to let foreign banks post collateral, they like to call it collateral, in return for printed cash. Well, you'd think we have buckets of money to hand out. As if buying trash bags full of who knows what from our own country wasn't bad enough, we are now preparing to start buying trash bags from Spain, Portugal, and Greece. See, here's a Greek one. This is a big one. It's a good, see, there's a lot of us. And honestly, the American taxpayers, great sucker, doesn't riot, doesn't vote, pays his taxes. You can steal his money. It's no problem. American taxpayer doesn't care. Just jam a little grease in your gut. You won't feel that. You might need Pepto a little bit later, but we won't talk about that. What do we got here? I guess this is Spain here. Hold on. Just don't move. No reason to get upset. Just keep paying your taxes. One more country won't hurt you, will it? I'll give you extra Pepto late night. You'll be fine. Whew. Man, stealing all that money is hard work. Of course, global markets have viewed all this with elation in the short term. Of course, global markets are run 60% of the volume is high-frequency trading by the banks, mind you. So anyway, here at home, the Dow surging hundreds of points on news of the rescue plan. Investors clearly breathing yet another sigh of relief that, God forbid, the private sector actually have to deal with anything. Instead, the public markets or the public governments will deal with all the risk. And, well, the stock market goes up because all the risk is with the taxpayer. Never mind the little fact that no one actually has anything like the $1 trillion that's being promised. It does make you wonder why you and I still have to pay our taxes when everybody else just runs a $1 trillion printing press to bail themselves out of a given situation. Why do we have to give money to anybody? Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Shaka Fatah of Pennsylvania. He wrote Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner on Friday urging U.S. support for the Greek bailout. Also with us from Spokane, Washington, Republican Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers, who opposed the Greek bailout. Kathy, why'd you oppose it?
Well, I think it's really a slap in the face to the honest, hardworking American taxpayers.
But that's how it's been that way for years. It's been that way for years. Well, isn't that the plan?
No one wants Greece to go bankrupt. It is a member of the European Union. The European Union was organized to actually be an economic competitor to the United States. We've had some states in America, California, New Jersey, New York, that have faced some very difficult budgets. And they've tightened their belt, made some difficult decisions in order to balance their budgets. But we didn't go to Europe asking them to help bail out these states. Yeah. And this is a situation that the European Union needed to figure out how to best meet the situation rather than going to the international community.
But when you have a corrupt banking system that seeks to leverage up the debt on countries and banks in order to make itself wealthy and then transfers that risk to the state, isn't the answer the end of bank and politician corruption, not austerity measures and taxation?
Yeah, the answer is for government to stop spending beyond its means. We cannot borrow.
I get that. I get that, but there's another issue here. Banking has become a highly low-margin, high-output business that has been corrupted by bankers and politicians to make money with uncollateralized derivatives, high-frequency trading, and cooking the books with the ratings agencies, in effect, to sell nonsense. Why are our politicians perpetuating these fraudulent businesses that banks call profits that's really a tax on the world's capital?
And it needs to stop. There needs to be transparency. We need to be honest about what's happening, and we need to be protecting the hardworking, honest American taxpayers and their dollars.
We're on the same page. Shaka, you voted for the bailout. Why? Or you advocated for the Greek bailout, I should say. Why?
Well, we have just on the current account measure, $1.5 trillion in economic activity between the EU and the United States. When you have $1.5 trillion on the table, you do things to protect it. What I said to Secretary Geithner is that we can't afford to have our economic recovery, which, by the way, has brought jobs, 290,000 new jobs, 4 jobs of job creation in a row, come to a halt because of this foolishness in terms of the EU not stepping up and living up to its responsibility in terms of dealing with Greece.
And that makes total sense. Isn't that the brilliance of too big to fail, where I am able to effectively threaten you with an unacceptable outcome, the loss of every pension, the loss of economic activity with the totality of Western Europe, unless you allow me as the bankers to transfer all of the risk to your government, allow me to keep all the money for creating all that debt, and, oh, please do not reform my business. What you just described is the absolute brilliance of the too big to fail model and the two-class system where one group of people basically takes over the government, creates an implicit threat like the cessation of all jobs or, for that matter, trade with Europe, and then politicians have no choice but to give away all of our tax money on a printing press. You have to admit that's a pretty clever strategy, wouldn't you say?
Well, I will admit to, because I disagree with some of it, but I think you're right that the blame goes to both the government officials, i.e. politicians, and to the private sector. But when the house is on fire, it's not a time to debate who started the fire. What it's time to deal with right now is the crisis. And as adults, what we have to look at is we're at the cutting edge of this worldwide recovery, or we can flip into a double dip if we're not careful. We can't assume that these are isolated events in the EU. We needed to act. That's why Vice President Biden met with the EU on Saturday and made it clear that they needed to take robust action. And I think that, you know, when we talk about the American taxpayer involvement, these dollars were put in place May 12th of 2009.